And so welcome everyone. Welcome to our weekly call. Thanks everyone for joining. As you may have seen today, given it's just past the closure for the Mozilla public TRR consultation, I thought it might be appropriate just to reflect on some of the issues that some people sort of noted as they were compiling their respective responses, just to get a sense of what were the key issues that people pulled out. So in order to facilitate that, I've asked a few people if they'd be so kind as to share their reflections on their responses. And just use that to then sort of trigger a wider discussion. And obviously, if anybody else wants to join in and share their reflections, then that's absolutely fine. But as I say, since I've got some willing volunteers to have had a chance to prepare their thoughts, I thought we'd start with those. One of those volunteers, Vittorio, said he's happy to do it, but he may be late joining. So I will endeavour. And actually, I see he's already on, so that's really helpful. In fact, yes, there you are on your camera. Hi, Vittorio. So let's take them in a sort of vaguely sort of sensible order, and we'll maybe start with Paul, who had some, I think, a couple of general points he pulled out in his response, and then we'll sort of circle around some of the other different points, and as I say, use that to trigger a broader discussion amongst everyone. So Paul, do you want to kick off?
I can certainly do that. Set up slideshow. Start from beginning. Share screen. All right, I'll make this quick. Don't worry about the fact that it's 6 slides. So this is the hello. There we go. This is the question Mozilla asked that I chose to answer. I realized this solicitation was broader than this, but I wanted to focus my time. And because I love the sound of my own voice, I have been trying to learn in recent years how to be brief. So I was as brief as possible. I've emphasized the point that I chose to follow up, which is the default on orientation, which is already present in the US versions of Mozilla's browser, but if they detect that you're not in the US, they don't currently do that. That to me is the crux. I'll give you about 15 seconds to read this. Okay, time's up. Next slide, please. And that's all.
Fantastic. So I think that's pretty clear, Paul, in terms of what your emphasis was on there, and very clearly expressed as to what the issue was as you saw it. So thank you for that. And what I suggest we do, we'll go through the various perspectives. If anyone wishes to jump in directly, then feel free to raise your virtual hand using the Zoom facility. Otherwise, post comments in the chat, and then we'll pick those up as we finish rolling through the sort of different points of view. So, as I say, there's a vague logic to this, but I thought next I'd maybe come to Till from ISPA UK, if you're able to put, yes, you are clearly able to share your screen as well.
Oh, yeah. Happy to do that. I won't ask you to read my slides. I briefly run through them. Key overarching points from us is shared interest in the fact that privacy and security shouldn't be optional on the internet.
You faded out slightly there. So you want to just say that last sentence or so again?
Cool, no worries. I'll try to be more clear. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's clearer.
So starting with overarching points, no, we have a shared interest as ISPA and UK internet service providers in, saying that privacy and security should not be optional online. No, that's sort of Mozilla's stated aim in this consultation and with the rollout of DOE. But then we sort of, in a way, add two further points to that, which we thought were not quite covered in Mozilla's rollout and in the consultation specifically. And that is, you should respect user choice and predetermined user choice. And you should also enhance online safety where you can and where possible. And then a further caveat to that is, if you roll something like DOE out in a liberal democracy with established rules and a state of law and a functioning parliament in place and all that kind of stuff, then the implementation of these standards and the drafting of such policy documents, such as the TR, should take account and respect that ecosystem that you find there, which includes general and specific legislation, but especially in the UK, it also includes sort of non-legislative measures that have led users to expect certain things to happen online. And you should also expect user rights. So that's a very general point. More specifically, and we do go into more specifics on each of these points in the consultation. Now, we do have a problem with the fact that there's no agreed standard for discovery. We do have a problem with the centralization element of the current rollout. We definitely have a problem with that this is getting really, really complicated for non-technical users, especially if, as there's an automatic opt-in. Those users, they might currently call their local ISP if stuff doesn't work, and they will do so in the future, and they won't believe the local ISP that when they say, sorry, it's not us, it's your browser. That's not something that users necessarily sort of have signed up for and will believe in the future. And I think it becomes specifically relevant in the context of parental controls, where if you're a parent and you have turned those on in the UK, which you can on all the large ISPs, then I think it's a fair expectation of a parent that just using a browser doesn't by default circumvent that parental control mechanism. And yeah, the last point I just touched on, there are lots of scenarios where the current rollout plans just make things a lot more complicated than they should be and than there are at the moment, including some sort of customer service implementations in the UK, which, if you are a non-technical user, will just probably lead to a worse service in the future, and especially a worse customer service if you have problems. So that's a very quick run through. I'm happy to answer any questions later.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Till. I think maybe Vittorio, if you're still on, can we come to you next?
Yeah, let me share my presentation. Okay. So, well, my contribution is pretty long, I'd say, and a bit rambling, but yeah, I've tried to summarize the main issue. So first of all, we started with two general considerations rather than going immediately into all the sections that Mozilla was proposing. So first one is that per application DNS resolution is not a good idea. So perhaps it could be left as an advanced option, but it would be a nightmare if each application started to do that on a default basis. And at least if this is to be a default, then Mozilla should, address the issue of who will provide support to users when things go wrong. And then the other consideration is that we absolutely challenge the claim that DNS filtering is not a good idea. First of all, because it's widely used. So one doesn't understand how can everyone else be wrong and Mozilla only be right on evaluating whether it's a good idea. And also Mozilla really seems to miss that most of the users are not really about censorship. So they seem to have analyzed the method just from the viewpoint of DNS filtering used for censorship, while we know it's used for many, many more things. And even if you focus on censorship, the two reasons that are provided for the assessment are self-contradictory. Since they say it's very impactful on fundamental rights, but at the same time they say it's easily circumventable. So the two things don't go well together. If it's easy to circumvent it, then it's not really blocking anyone's fundamental rights. And in the end, I've already heard this argument. I'm happy that other people are making it. That this is a matter of compromise between the individual's free speech and the right to access content and whatever, and other people's rights. People that are harmed by the accessibility of the content. It might be children, it might be copyright holders, it might be, a number of other people, consumers. And in this case, the proper compromise is the matter of a national multi-stakeholder decision. So that there has to be a democratic process that we built involving all the stakeholders.
Steffen, hello?
Yeah, and in the end,
hallo.
Which is valid for the national internet community.
Nee, alles gut, alles gut. Das passt.
Yeah, then the comments include some specific comments on the various sections that they proposed. First of all, on the general, let's say, TRR policy, the comment is that, again, having a different accreditation process for each application is not a good idea. If it's really necessary to have an accreditation of resolvers, then there should be one for the entire industry so that it's more accessible for everyone. And then, the current policy still has some clauses that are incompatible with national law. And then also, by the way, on a specific point, I understand they want to block an X-domain redirection to advertising pages. That's fine, it's a good idea, but they shouldn't block efforts to actually redirect, block domains to meaningful error pages that can actually be beneficial, since they can actually help users in bypassing the blocks when it's a block that should be, at least as an option, bypassed. And in terms of privacy and security, again, I'm always a bit struck by the fact that Mozilla doesn't seem to understand the European concept of privacy, which is about limiting the circulation of data and putting the user in control. While they seem to think that it's their job to take decisions on behalf of the user. This is not really how the GDPR works. And actually, if you add more companies into the data loop, one more company taking care of part of the DNS traffic, then it's less privacy by definition. By the way that the European privacy laws are designed. And on a specific point, they say they will audit the operators, which is fine, but then there's basically no guarantee. Unless the audit is continuous, there is no guarantee that the practices will change 1 minute after the audit ends. And so there's always to be a degree of trust in the operator. So they should at least wonder why some of the operators are really willing to run a consumer resolver operation for free. At least give some thought at that. And then for the last two sections, well, regarding the online safety section, that's mostly about DNS filtering. So it was mostly covered by the comments I already made. But in the end, they really should not disrupt any safety mechanism chosen by the other stakeholders. And also we have an observation on the fact that maybe standardizing a little some of these technologies and practices would actually make them more transparent and more inclusive. So it would be a better way than just publishing the list of block domains for everyone to see, which might not always be possible. But at least having some degree of standard could help in making things more accountable. And finally, I really like this idea of building a better ecosystem. But I think that if they want to build a better ecosystem, first they should learn and listen from the people that have been in that ecosystem for the last 20 or 30 years. So ISPs and DNS operators. And especially, of course, we support and we ask them to support same provider auto-upgrade model. It's also, by the way, the best way to prompt operators to actually deploy encrypted DNS. So that was their question, and the answer is, I mean, just aligned with what everyone else is suggesting. And by the way, I mean, yes, there are cases in which DOH is usual, but as usual, they seem to assume that all computers are roaming and going to internet cafes. And also that all people are not able to take care of DNS resolution for themselves. And so we made a point of, I mean, having to support also the personal DNS resolvers. I mean, the Pi-hole style, or in any case, smarter users that actually want to manage directly their own DNS resolution. And by the way, they are a significant, I mean, in a disproportionate way, they use Firefox over other browsers. So in the end, the bottom line of this is that, I mean, they seem sometimes to dismiss other people's use cases because they don't fit into their vision, and this is not really building a better ecosystem. It's rather something that creates problems to everyone. So that's all.
Thank you, Vittorio, for a very rapid run through some interesting issues there. And then I think hopefully Chris Box is also poised to just share a few thoughts. If you're on, Chris.
Yep. So, first of all, I guess you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, and can you see the screen?
Indeed. Yep.
Good. So, this is not BT's complete response. I've just taken the liberty of pulling out some of the more interesting ones and removing the less interesting ones. So yeah, so the responses are in red here. So one of the questions asked was, how should there be some transparency into what the resolve was doing? So BT's pointed out, particularly the UK situation, where we've got laws that we have to comply with and emerging legislation. So the UK Online Harms Framework and the EU Digital Service Act, they are quite clear in introducing statutory transparency reporting. So I think this is essentially saying this is a good thing, but let's try and coordinate with it rather than build something else that's separate to it. Moving on to online safety. So there's a question on how do we protect users from illegal content? And we're saying, yes, obviously you can do endpoint controls. But the key problem with that is they are poorly adopted, for a few reasons that you won't be particularly surprised by. That you have to require the installation on the device. They're usually chargeable, and as soon as you've done those, then they're not going to be adopted very much. So this is kind of making the point that if we're trying to do some of these things at scale, you really have to look in the network. And of course, ECH is another thing that's going on, and ECH challenges the ability to do that in network. I mean, I personally, I'd say it makes more sense to do filtering. If you're going to do it in the network, it makes more sense to do it on DNS than it does to do it based on TLS SNI. So another one, I mean, we've only got, these are the last two I'm going to talk about. So there's a question about what do we do about the management of filtering block lists? So BT's saying there needs to be a really good method for customers to be able to complain about blocking decisions and have them be corrected. So we've got quite a bit of experience of doing that in terms of parental controls. Certainly on the mobile side, that's working fairly fluidly. And we're specifically saying no more than 1 to 2 days for actually making corrections to that. And of course, the UK setup is that we have the BBFC as the independent third party that in the case of parental controls is making those decisions and saying, yes, this should be allowed, yes, this should be blocked for particular age groups, which then means you don't have divergence between the operators. And finally, there's the question about, are there situations in which deployment of DOH might cause challenges? So we're pointing out, yes, there can be challenges with DNS 6.4, which is part of the mapping process to allow you to use IPv6 without having to have v4 as well. But the larger point here is, I think that it's not only enterprises that need security. Because security is, in the DNS sense, it's being able to spot traffic patterns of malicious traffic, queries going to command and control servers, etc., and being able to spot that and being able to do something about it. And enterprises have an expectation of being able to do that, and by doing that, they can then fend off some of those attacks. So here we're making the point that it's not just enterprises that need security. Home users also need it, as they have increasingly numbers of IoT devices, and those IoT devices are unmanaged and do what they want. The need for being able to prevent attacks and compromises will only grow, and so that goes towards the needs for some control over DNS in the home environment as well as the enterprise environment. So that's all I had on that one.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I did also ask John Carr, who deals with sort of civil society, particularly in terms of sort of rights around sort of children and children's charities. I don't think John was able to make it on the call in the end. He had a sort of personal emergency to deal with. But he was certainly, I think, in his response, which I won't attempt to do justice to, he highlighted a couple of issues, particularly around the importance of filtering of content, filtering and blocking, and also around paying attention to local laws in the relevant jurisdiction of the user.
That's underplaying his response a little.
Yes.
Did he not say that you could present what he wrote on screen?
I can't remember if he actually put that in his email, to be fair. Let me just reread it.
He did.
Because
yes.
now my curiosity's piqued.
Sorry, Glenn?
I said now my curiosity has really got an uptick. I've got to see what the original comments were, hopefully.
Okay, let me see if I can put this, make sure I get the right thing and I don't inadvertently put the wrong thing on the screen, which would be extremely unfortunate. Okay, am I sharing my screen with John's?
Now we're seeing your holiday photos.
If only I had a holiday, that would be a fine thing, to be fair, Glenn. Is that sort of legible? Is that large enough?
It's hard to read, but it is readable.
Okay, I don't know if I can zoom in at all on this. Oh yeah, I can. Is that more legible?
Yes.
For me, it is.
Okay. I'll let you scan down that because it took me far too long to read out loud and it'd be horrible. But you'll note he challenges the point about filtering, which clearly was a common feature in some of your other responses.
I want to say for the record that I have always appreciated John Carr's passion for online child crime prevention.
Yes.
Which is why I didn't try and portray that, because it's rather hard to do it justice when it's someone who feels so deeply about it. But I think his text does a pretty good job actually of conveying his thinking. Again, I'll try and get a sense of how long this is taking people to read, those of you that have an interest in reading it. So a couple of people give me a verbal indication when you may have got towards the end.
Andrew, if I may. Yeah, so I have to leave now, and unfortunately, I really appreciate all what has been put so far on the screen and the explanation. Again, there are a number of things that fundamentally drive the opposition to what we are seeing here, and they have to do with many things like many people in IETF who are pushing for this model we don't like are pushing it because they confuse encryption with security. That's one. The second is a number of parties have created this model because they have a very narrow model of the human being in the background. Right? They do not take into account literally an anthropology that does not exist right now. So it is so narrow that they are trying to get everybody to fit in this very narrow model. And that's a fundamental issue we have that spans across all what we are seeing here. The issue about privacy and security, as I probably explained the other day, is we are not like physicists. Physicists had to face the problem of quantum physics and to understand why can we have physics in two states. And that led to the cat of Schrödinger. And here we have another cat of Schrödinger, which is about privacy and security. And because people do not understand that, they have to break it. You are either on the side of privacy or on the side of security, rather than re-understand this complexity together. So we have zealotisms in both sides, which ended up to a third point, which is that we are facing a party that is telling us security is only on the two ends of the communication, which professionals here, we all know that it cannot work this way. But the other party is la, 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 we do not want to hear that story. So everything they do, so though is just one piece of it. I think it's Chris explained about ESNI is the next point, but TLS was the beginning. His whole story was to push away everything from the network for reasons that have nothing to do with privacy and security. They have to do with who owns data and the metadata. So there is a clear business reason for why these people are doing it against what we think is right. And now we end up in this situation because 2 years ago, they started to win this debate with the help of some non-governmental organization who clearly helped them to win this agenda. So now we have a party on non-governmental organization, apart from John, that has pushed for a direction that was impossible to support the people at risk anyway. So now we end up in a stupid model where we are going to end up with a fully encrypted pipe from end to end down to ESNI. We will have no way to protect this world, and who will benefit the most? The hackers. So we are going to open a world where we have the risk to have a COVID-19 equivalent in the cyber world, where on top of that, we are forbidden to defend, or the cost of defense will be so enormous that nobody will be able to afford the defense. Because the only way, for example, for enterprise customers and as well at home, will be to decrypt everything, which means that the people who will still succeed to do that, because we will still do, will be the risk, because they will be the targets to hit to then open to everything. So we have this problem against us, and unfortunately, I don't think we can be the nice guys here. We are facing dogmatic people. It's a dogma. It's either you are in these Guardians of the Temple side or not. And if you are not, you will be pushed down by people like Steve Farrell and Aker and so on in IETF. This happened to us, and this is what is happening to you. Anyway, I'm a bit too passionate, and I have to go to this other call, but I had to say it. I hope I should be next week, and I hope at some point I can put my ideas in writing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Keep doing.
Thank you. So just picking up on that. So the intent of this discussion then is very much not to say whether what Mozilla is doing is right or wrong per se, but to try and tease out some of the key points and issues which I think you could apply in lots of other instances, such as Paul's around it should be opt-in rather than opt-out and so on, which I think are good sort of general policy points. So I'm conscious that that's quite a lot of content. And I can see on the chat a few people have made comments, I think prompted, at least in part, by some of that. Does anyone that hasn't yet contributed verbally want to jump on and actually sort of speak? And if so, do you want to raise your virtual hand if you want to make a point based on what you've heard, or if you think there are some other key issues that perhaps haven't been fully represented as yet, including some counterpoints. Because I have to say, this was a very unscientific sample of people who I knew that had provided responses. It's not intended to be representative because I don't know the full spectrum of responses yet. I see, Mark, you've raised your virtual hand, so do you want to come off mute and comment?
Hi, this is Mark Zeric. I agree with almost everything that people said here. I just wanted to offer a suggestion, and it's related to corporate use of the browser. So it's Microsoft's position, and this position has been stated here as well, that having a per application setting for DNS is a terrible experience. It will be very confusing to users who manage their own settings, and it's very difficult for corporate IT who are trying to manage policies. However, if your application is set up correctly, for example, if it's keeping its settings in the registry, then it can be controlled centrally by group policy. And so Microsoft provides group policy solutions. Group policy preferences, I think, is the way that you control applications for Windows. And there are a number of other solutions for Mac and for Linux, or for mixed environments. And if Mozilla would ensure that these settings were available to be controlled by group policy or whatever equivalent on whatever platform, that would allow corporate administrators or any administrators who have to manage a lot of machines to easily make the settings conform to their own corporate settings or their local laws, local regulations. And in the absence of this, I think they should expect that there'll be other policies which simply block that application on such machines. So if they want adoption in a commercial setting, they're going to have to provide these sort of controls, centralized controls for administrators. So that would be a positive suggestion I would make in response to all these other observations, which I do in fact agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's much appreciated. And likewise, does anyone else, and as I'm asking, I'll also try and tease out some of the points from the chat, but does anyone else want to jump on the mic, has a point, maybe something, a different point of view even, which would be certainly very welcome. And whilst you're maybe thinking, I can see, yeah, I can see Greg making the point about mobile users wanting both complete freedom and protection, and there being something of a dichotomy there. Glenn, do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, I'll even come off video. There you go. There's the luscious locks. So not specifically comments directly about the TRR, but sort of teasing out an important theme, I think, that has come out in some of these comments. And that is the willingness of parties to engage in a broader public discourse about plans that are so major. I think that was an important lesson. I think that was really shown in the early days of DOE that was very much needed. I think that we clearly have a broad community participation of people with very different views. We have operators, we have people from civil society, we have people from human rights groups, we have government parties, we have technical engineers that all, when asked, do you want to come to the table and discuss, they did. And I think that that's an important lesson to always keep in mind here, that the path going forward for any major change, such as this or other things coming up, really should include an engagement with the broader community to listen and discuss. Because without that, we all have blinders on, and we all will end up going in directions which, even if we understood better the implications and the consequences in other areas that we're not experts in, we may revise and change our path forward. And so on that, I'll give kudos to Mozilla for doing the consultation on TRR. I will say, however, I wish they'd done that before they deployed it. I think that would have been the correct order of the cart and horse in this scenario.
Yeah, yeah, good points. Thank you for that, Glenn. And I can see Tommy highlighted the maybe false equivalency just on one of the points around the Parler takedown. Yeah, which is fair enough. And just before I come to Jim, just to try and catch up a little with the chat, I can see Peter asked about the canary domain. There was certainly a question towards the end of the consultation, Peter, regarding the wider use. I can't remember my response to that, if I'm honest, from my consultation response, but maybe others, if you want to give some thought to, if you did comment around the canary domain and related matters, you can maybe come back on in a moment and maybe share that with Peter and everybody else. But in the meantime, Jim, did you want to make a point? Read, that is, for clarity.
Yes, I did. Thanks, Andrew. Just to build on what Glenn was saying before about consultation, I think it's been a significant group that's been missed in the work in the IETF and in other of these little ad hoc groups that are looking at deployment, and that's namely corporations and enterprises. These are not really represented. We're getting this information kind of secondhand, and obviously the great work that Microsoft's doing is very, very helpful, and they'll be giving us some insight from business or the corporate settings. But one thing that I'm concerned about is that many enterprises, many businesses don't seem to be too aware of what the impact of DOE is going to be on all sorts of things inside these corporations. And I don't know of a vehicle or a mechanism for engaging with them. I mean, how do we get these people to come to the IETF or take part in these kind of discussions like the ones we're having just now? Do they have any kind of representative fora which could be approached to do that? We've got organisations in the UK, like, for example, the Institute of Directors, the Confederation of British Industry. But have they been approached? I don't think so. Do they have any insights to this? Maybe not. But these people have to be part of this discussion, part of this dialogue. And it's all very well we can get some insight from Microsoft and some of the other vendors about what goes on inside these corporate networks. But it'd be good to hear from them directly if we possibly could.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Jim. And in fact, for those of you that went on the call last week, and apologies as an aside, I haven't had a chance to send out the notes yet, or the recording of the call is up. The US NSA did put out a helpful briefing a week or so ago with some initial advice to enterprises on encrypted DNS, in particular on DOE. To at least start to broach the subject with that wider audience. But you're right, I think, Jim, that it would be good to hear the voice of enterprises as far as you're able to more directly in these debates, because it is tremendously important. And I can see in the chat that in terms of the canary domain piece, that in response to the question that Peter Lowe asked, Brett has posted a comment that it was certainly covered within the Nominet response. And Jen Hello, that Vodafone are in favour of it, but the default option should be off, with some additional material to add to that. So there's some additional thoughts there. See, Paul, you've got your Vixie, that is, you got your hand raised. Did you want to come off mute?
Yes, I think I'm off mute.
You are
yes.
indeed.
So I did not answer in the consultation about the canary domain, but I did make those views known on DNSOP, which is a IETF working group mailing list, which is that the canary domain is a unilateral attempt at negotiation, and it has the wrong basis, fundamentally the wrong basis. I will not be using a canary domain, and the reason is anything which does not respect my DNS settings in DHCP isn't welcome on my network. I'm not going to add signaling to get it to behave the way it used to behave. It has to continue behaving the way it used to behave unless there is new signaling. So the burden of adding signaling to control behavior would be on Mozilla's part, not on mine. This is highlighted by the number of filtering solutions, which are fire and forget or homebrew, where it is the filtering may be from a prior generation of technologists that may not be aware of exactly how it works. They may not be updating their software, and they certainly might not be following mailing lists where Mozilla's behavior is described. There are two additional problems. First, this canary is something Mozilla is doing more or less to soften the blow. They're exfiltrating private information to remote parties whose legal regime may be different than that of the end user. They're doing this for reasons they think are principled, but they can stop at any time. And I submit to you that the moment an authoritarian regime, such as China or in modern days Brazil, decides that they're going to use this canary domain in order to trigger different behavior by Mozilla's browser, that will be the day that they begin to consider turning it off, because they will call that an abuse of power. So even if I were willing to grant the basis that I should alter my configuration in order to get my previously working configuration to keep working, I would not say that this canary domain was a valid way to do that. Finally, let me add that I have gone around the world in the pre-pandemic year. I probably spent 15 months on the road talking at conferences. Some of you have witnessed that. I hope the rant was not too irrational, but in the hallways, I have met a lot of enterprise people who had no idea that ESNI or ECH was coming, and that their HTTPS interception method at the border of their corporate network was about to stop working. They had no idea DOH was coming. They did not know there was such a thing as a canary domain, and they don't know how to set one up. So this is fundamentally the wrong approach. The idea of a canary domain, unless it is used to trigger new, different behavior, is crazy talk. That's why I focused on opt-in versus opt-out. This is not that different from spam. Don't put me on some list and tell me that I have to act in order to get myself off that list. That's not unsubscribing because I never subscribed. This is the same principle. All communications must be consensual, and a public benefit nonprofit corporation such as Mozilla ought to know that. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for a point well made. And as I say, this wasn't specifically just about Mozilla, just to broaden the point. It was also hopefully to provide useful input to others developing software, or at least food for thought. Just one final person I wanted to come to, if they're interested in commenting. I think Hanny may have had a point or an observation to make based on some of the data that AT&T has picked up.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you all hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, sounds good. So we AT&T shares most of the concerns that are raised in the response and made here. So I'm not going to go over this. Another angle that we want to add to the table for a different perspective is the support of EDNS client subnet. So we on the AT&T side, and I'm sure many other ISPs or operators around the world are doing similar kind of, or they have similar kind of practices related to the deployment of local caching and caching capabilities. Our understanding that Mozilla is not willing to support EDNS client subnet because of privacy. And for a period of time on the AT&T side, especially on the wireline side, we have seen a significant percentage of web browsing requests being served from local caching that significantly help the user performance, and at the same time significantly reduce the traffic, the amount of traffic on the backbone and on peering links. So since day one, we heard about DOE. This has been a concern. And by the way, don't get us wrong, we are actually implementing DOE, and it's going to be very soon. It's going to be available both on the wireless and wireline infrastructure in AT&T. So we are very supportive of the privacy dimension of DOE. But on the other hand, our concern about Mozilla not supporting EDNS capabilities, we've started actually seeing significant amount of inefficient routing of traffic happening over the AT&T core network. And DOE is not the only thing to blame for this. I mean, VPN is another reason to blame this inefficient routing of traffic and less utilization of caching. So this might be another point to add to the response, that the support of EDNS is something important that we have to consider. And again, ISPs, I believe, started seeing the impact of not using local caching capabilities on the capacity of peering links and content routing to other of significant contents. Actually going to the right location is going to affect the bandwidth, and it's going to affect the utilization as well of the internet. So I just wanted to add this to the comments that you all raised.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hanny. So maybe a point for consideration for some of the client software developers to really give thought to the implementation of EDNS, or support for that to help with efficient network routing in the future. So yeah, that's a helpful additional point of view to throw in. And I can see in the chat sort of discussion continuing about how best to bring in the voice of enterprises, and it's maybe not as straightforward as might first seem in terms of how to do that, and whether the expertise is necessarily there in-house, but maybe that's a discussion to continue to see what routes would bring some informed parties to the table to be representative of the enterprise perspective. So I suggest we draw the conversation to a close there. Hopefully that was useful to people, and we'll throw up some points of consideration for others as you develop your encrypted DNS clients, and some useful points of principle. So thank you to everyone for contributing with the content and the discussion. I'll now move on briefly to any other business. A couple of things. I saw, in fact, today, another instance of some malware using DO for command and control. It was just after I sent out the weekly news headline, so I'll put that in the material for next week. But malware does seem to be taking advantage, as is often the case, so that shouldn't be any great surprise to anyone. Looking ahead over this next week or next couple of weeks, we've got sort of two important interim working group meetings. The ADD working group on Wednesday, followed the same evening, European time at least, by the Deprive working group. So both of those, I think the ADD one is at 1600 UTC through to 1730, and then Deprive is 1800 through 2000 UTC. So there should be some interesting discussions on Wednesday. And then over the next week or so, I know we've got the European Commission High-Level Internet Governance group meeting also this week. And we've got, amongst other things, NANOG convening in a couple of weeks' time. And I think DNS OARC, I can't quite see my crib sheet at the moment, but so there's plenty of stuff coming up. Glenn, was there anything, without specifically putting you on the spot, but just was there anything in terms of Wednesday's working group that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, a couple of points. Following the other formats of the interims for ADD, we're going to continue with the practice of the majority of the conversation will be spent on discussion with minimal presentations. However, we've had a lot of significant new material added. There was a new version of Box requirements that was published, I think, well, time-wise, probably today, or my time zone may be a little bit off, but within the last 24 hours. And that will be discussed as well as the DEAR draft and the DHCP home draft. So I will be putting out a note later on today. I've asked all the presenters to get me their slides later today. And so when I've got all that together, I will bundle it up, publish it so that everyone has it available ahead of the meeting for Monday, or for Wednesday, sorry.
Yeah. Surprise, it's in 10 minutes. Oh, that's really good. It should be a good discussion, plenty to cover there. Thank you. Oh,
and the last thing, Andrew, sorry, I forgot, the DEAR draft right now is in working group working group adoption call, and that ends tomorrow, that consultation. So if you have any comments for or against it, please get them in by the Tuesday, January 26th. So far, it's looking very positive. But you never know. So if you're lurking out there, you've got objections to it, now's the time to speak up.
Yep. Speak now or forever keep your peace. Or at least until the next
We'll make you the editor. What will happen is if you don't like it, we're going to make you the
editor. Yes, that's true. That would be a good punishment for anyone that misses a deadline. Lovely. All right. Thank you, Glenn. And then just one last thing, in terms of looking ahead to topics for maybe next week. I think Zaid, you had a suggestion which I thought might be useful just to bounce off people to see what they thought. If you wanted to come off mute.
Sorry, yes, sorry, I just I was on mute. Yeah, so I after coming back from the holidays, I learned something new, and that is the okay. I had a note here to talk to. I erased it, but DNS for EU. So I thought maybe that would be an interesting subject to kind of learn about, specifically as to what the approach is and whether what thoughts are going into the architecture of that. So that's really in short, what the topic suggestion is.
Thank you, Zaid. So I don't know if anyone has any immediate sort of thoughts on that. Give you a chance to sort of call in if you do. Or if not, but please sort of give that some thought and maybe come back on email if you think that'd be sort of good to maybe pick up on next week or in the following weeks. I'd be very happy to do that. I know certainly part of the Commission's high-level internet governance meeting later this week is talking about the Digital Services Act package, which landed from the Commission middle of December. So there's sort of going to be plenty of raw material there as well. But yeah, okay. Well, if anyone does have any thoughts on DNS4EU, please maybe share those by email after the call. So anything else anyone wants to raise in the last minute or so before we finish? The last chance to shout out if you do. Otherwise, I'll say thank you, everyone, particularly those of you that prepared a few sort of comments in advance. That was very much appreciated, and I hope others found that helpful and food for thought for the future. So with that in mind, thanks, everyone. Let's draw the call to a close there. Thanks all. Have a fantastic week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.